All right, class, we are in the second half of 7.3. In this one, we're going to be looking at social measures of development. So first we focused on economic. Now we're going to be taking a look at social measurements. This is actually pretty straightforward. These are mostly just methods of measurement. So I'm not going to go into a ton of detail, just kind of briefly touch on each of these. So just make sure that you review through what each one of these means. So first one, total fertility rate. This should be familiar to y'all from Unit 2. So this is just the average number of children given that women will birth within their lifetime. So we typically see high total fertility rates in less developed countries, low total fertility rates in more developed countries. So here are two examples we have here. Niger at 7.29. So on average, women will have over 7 children within their lifetime. Spain at 1.25. So most women will have less than 2 children within their given lifetime. So why do women have or not have babies? And what does that have to do with development? This was something that we definitely went over during population, and we see how that relates back to some of the social infrastructure and development that's offered in these countries. Infant mortality rate, another familiar one. So the number of deaths of infants, so babies that are 1 year old or younger in a given year for 1,000 that were born that year. This is high in less developed countries and low in more developed countries. So why would an infant die, and what does that have to do with development? Again, coming back to some of the social services like healthcare available. Access to healthcare, right? Tying into the previous two. Access to healthcare we see lower in less developed countries and high in more developed countries. So as you can see here, right, we see the typical trends in terms of like world regions of where we have more and less developed countries. So why wouldn't someone have access to healthcare, and what does that have to do with development? Again, kind of coming back to some of these overarching themes of this particular unit. Life expectancy, so the number of years a person is expected to live based on mortality rates when they are born. So this is low in less developed countries and high in more developed countries. In the Central African Republic, we have just under 51 years old, whereas in Australia, 83.4 years old. So huge discrepancy there. So why wouldn't somebody live a long life, and what does that have to do with development? Again, coming back to some of these social understandings of what development is. Literacy rates. This is another good one to take a look at what kind of programming and like education available in different areas. So this is low in less developed countries, but pretty widespread for most other countries, those in the semi-periphery and the core. Most literacy rates are pretty good. Like in more developed countries, they're very, very high. So why wouldn't someone know how to read or write, and what does that have to do with development? Again, overarching theme of like social development. The Human Development Index, HDI. So this is a cool one because it takes into account a lot of different factors. So this, similar to the Gini index, is a score between 0 and 1. The lower the score, the less developed. The closer to 1, the more developed it is. So different indicators help to measure this, and this gives a more holistic perspective of development in an area because it takes into account multiple elements. It combines social and economic measures. So here we have life expectancy at birth, years of schooling, expected years of schooling, and then the gross national income per capita. So all of those, we have health, education, we have living wages, that kind of thing. All that gets combined and factored into HDI. So this tends to be low in less developed countries and high in more developed countries. So an example would be South Sudan at 0.39. That's the calculation overall. And then for Norway at 0.95, so very, very close to 1. The Gender Inequality Index, this is also a score between 0 and 1. High value means high levels of inequality. A lower number means low inequality. So, for instance, Yemen, which has had so much internal conflict in more recent years, they are at 0.77. let's go back, whereas Germany is at 0.07. So Germany has less inequality or more equality in terms of gender, whereas Yemen has a lot more inequality. So this allows us to have a more accurate picture because it also combines social, economic, and political indicators. So let's take a look at that. So all these different factors get applied to gender inequality index. So we're going to go through each of these. So maternal mortality rate. So this is the rate of women who died during pregnancy or within 1 year of pregnancy due to complications. This is calculated for every 100,000 births. So this is high in less developed countries, right? Women might not have the same kind of healthcare as more developed countries do. Also, adolescent fertility. So this is the number of births per 1,000 women from ages 10 to 19. So this is high in less developed countries. We see like the younger somebody is, like while they're still in their adolescent phase of life, if they're giving birth, that tends to be something that happens a lot more in less developed countries, whereas it's low in more developed countries. So here we can see and compare some of those stats. Also, parliamentary representation. This is another element that gets factored into this. So this is a proportion of women that hold seats in congressional positions or in Congress, women that are like voted in or involved in politics. So these numbers are all over the place. There's not really a particular trend. Which is interesting, right? So here, let's say the US, it's really not that high, definitely higher in Europe, but also we see pretty high trends in less developed areas like South Africa down here, Mexico, and so on. So the highest one is Rwanda at 61%, which is pretty impressive. And some of the lowest are Qatar at Yemen at a whopping 0%. Then educational attainment. So this question of what kind of access to women have to school or secondary school. This is low for LDCs, like low access in less developed countries. So in Nigeria, 82% of women are not educated. This has much more access in more developed countries. So, and we can see that trend here on this map. And then finally, labor force participation. So do women work outside of the home? Is there a clear pattern between more developed and less developed countries? And also scale of data is important. So for women to be able to officially be participating in the labor force is another indicator. So all of these contribute to the Gender Inequality Index. And that is it for social development. Make sure that you guys take a look at these, like the definitions of these measurements when it comes to the exam. You're typically given stats and data, but it's just important that you know what these things are measuring, right? So I will see you